The classroom was quiet. Too quiet. Miss Sophia stood in front of the blackboard, her hands slightly shaking. Today was her last day as a teacher. After 30 long years, she was retiring. The final bell had just rung. Students were packing their bags, laughing, taking selfies, writing goodbye notes on each other's notebooks, but Miss Sophia was lost in her own thoughts. Her eyes kept going to one empty chair in the back of the room. The chair belonged to Amir. He hadn't come today. She looked down at her old, worn-out desk. It was covered with thank you cards and small gifts from her students. One read, "You were the best teacher of my life." Another said, "We will never forget you, Miss," but none of it made her smile. She had been waiting for one thing, one goodbye, one face. Amir's Sophia had always known there was something different about Amir. He was quiet, polite, and always sat alone. He didn't joke around like the other boys. He hardly smiled, but he always listened. And his eyes were full of something heavy, like he was carrying a pain no one saw. She had watched him closely all year, tried to help him, talk to him, but he never spoke much. Only once. After school, he had asked her, "Do you believe people can find what they've lost?" That question stayed with her for weeks. Now he was gone. Miss Sophia sighed, slowly removing the chalk from her fingers. Her voice trembled as she said, "Goodbye, class." Some students clapped. A few ran to hug her. Others gave her flowers. Still, her eyes searched for Amir, but he never came. An hour later, the school building was almost empty. The sun was beginning to set. The hallways, once filled with laughter and shouting, now echoed softly. Miss Sophia stayed behind, alone in the classroom. She opened the cupboard under her desk and pulled out a small box. Inside the box were old photographs, letters, and cards from her first year of teaching. She smiled at some of the faces, now grown up. Some names she had forgotten, but their words were still clear. Suddenly she heard footsteps. Slow, soft ones. She looked up, hand froze. Standing at the door was Amir. He was holding something in his hand. An envelope. Her heart stopped for a second. He looked nervous, but calm. His eyes met hers, and this time, they were not empty. "Amir," she whispered. "You came." He walked slowly toward her. No smile, no words. Just silence between them. He stopped right in front of her and held out the envelope. "This is for you," he said. She took it with shaking hands. "What is it?" Amir didn't answer. She looked down at the envelope. It had no name on it, no words. Just an old soft paper, slightly crumpled at the corners. She looked up again. But Amir had already turned away. "Wait," she called. He paused at the door but didn't turn back. "I didn't think you were coming," she said, voice cracking. "Almost didn't," he replied softly. "But you waited, so I came." Then he walked out. Miss Sophia stood still, holding the envelope tightly. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter and a photograph. She sat down slowly at her desk, breath short, eyes wide. She looked at the photo. It was a picture of a baby, wrapped in a blue blanket. And on the back, in faded writing, were the words for the one who gave him his name. Sophia stared at it for a long moment. Her mind began to race. Her eyes filled. She opened the letter next. It read, "You may not remember the day you found a baby outside your school gate. You gave him a name. You gave him a chance. He was taken from you by the world, but he found you again years later. He sat in your class. He listened. He waited, because you were the first person who made him feel seen. You were more than a teacher. You were his beginning. And now, he wants to give you the ending you deserve. Thank you for not forgetting. Thank you for waiting a student you once saved." Miss Sophia couldn't breathe. Her hands dropped to her lap. Tears rolled down. Her face silent, warm, endless. The empty classroom around her felt full again. Full of memories, full of answers, she whispered to herself. It was him. It was always him. She picked up the photo again, now wet with tears, and as the sun finally disappeared behind the old school building, she sat quietly in her chair, holding the envelope close to her heart. The last bell had already rung, but something was just beginning. Miss Sophia sat alone in her classroom long after the sun had gone down. The letter in her hand was now slightly wrinkled from her tight grip. Her eyes were red, but her tears had stopped. Her heart was heavy, full of questions she had no answers to. She kept reading the letter again and again, trying to believe it was real. Amir, the quiet boy with the sad eyes, the one who never laughed. He had been sitting in front of her all year, carrying this secret, and she had no idea. She remembered the day clearly, so many years ago. A cold winter morning. She had arrived early to school like always, and found something at the front gate. A small baby wrapped in a blue blanket. No note, no sound, just tiny eyes looking up at her. She had rushed the baby inside, called the police, and cried while holding him. She was young then, new to the job, full of hope. She named him Amir, meaning the one who gives life hope. But the system didn't allow her to keep him. She was single, with no legal rights. The authorities took him away the same day. She never saw the baby again. Until now. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe. So many emotions came rushing through her. How did Amir find her? How did he end up in her class after all these years? Did he know the truth before the school year began? Or did he discover it along the way? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of rain starting outside. Light drops tapped on the window like a soft knock. She looked out, wondering where Amir was now. Did he go home? Was he okay? Did he regret giving her the letter? She picked up her phone and dialed the school's admin office, hoping they had an address on file. But the number went to voicemail. It was too late. She sat back down, letter still in her hand. Suddenly she noticed something. The envelope he gave her had a second paper hidden behind the letter. She had missed it earlier. She gently pulled it out. It was a page from an old diary. The handwriting was small, neat, and full of emotion. It read, "I was 7 when I saw her again. I didn't know who she was then. I only felt something, like I knew her voice, her smile. She was handing out books on the first day of school. She smiled at everyone, but when she looked at me, I felt seen, like I mattered. I didn't know why I wanted to sit in the front row that year. I just did. Every time she spoke, it felt like warmth. Every time she said my name, something in me healed. I didn't know she named me. I didn't know she found me, but somehow, I felt it. That day I promised myself, if I ever found the truth, I'd return it to her. She gave me a name. I wanted to give her back her memory." Miss Sophia's hands trembled as she read the last line. She clutched the paper to her chest, overwhelmed by the depth of Amir's words. All these years, she had believed she had failed, that she couldn't save the baby, that the child might have forgotten her, but he didn't. He remembered in ways even he couldn't explain. She stood up suddenly. Her mind was racing. She had to find him now. She grabbed her coat, stuffed the letters into her bag, and ran into the rain. The streets were almost empty. The rain was heavier now, cold and sharp, but she didn't stop. She knew the path Amir took home. She had watched him walk that street many times. As she reached a small neighborhood near the old bookstore, she saw a shadow under the bus stop. It was him. Amir sat alone on the bench, soaked, holding something in his lap. She walked toward him slowly, unsure of what to say. He noticed her and stood up, surprised. "Miss Sophia," he said quietly. She looked at him, and her eyes filled again. "You should be home," she said. "It's raining." He looked down. "I didn't know where else to go." She stepped closer. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Amir hesitated. "I wasn't sure. I found the adoption file only a few months ago. My grandmother kept it hidden. When I saw your name, I didn't believe it at first. But when I joined your class, something inside me knew. I just didn't know how to tell you." She took his hand gently. "You gave me something I never thought I'd find again." He looked up. "You didn't forget?" "Never," she said. "You were mine for a few minutes, but in my heart, forever." Amir blinked quickly, trying to hide his tears. She sat beside him on the bench. The rain still fell, but softer now. "You named me," he whispered. "You saved me. You came back," she replied. "You gave me closure." They sat in silence, rain dripping from the bench, cars passing slowly in the background. For the first time in many years, Miss Sophia felt full again, not just as a teacher but as someone who had truly made a difference. She looked at Amir and smiled. "Let's go home." He nodded. As they walked together under the same small umbrella, the past felt lighter. The unanswered questions now had meaning. The quiet pain now had a voice. And for the first time since the last bell rang, Miss Sophia didn't feel alone. Miss Sophia and Amir walked quietly through the rainy street. The silence between them wasn't heavy now. It was soft, warm, full of unspoken words that didn't need to be said. Each step felt like a piece of the past being slowly healed. When they reached Sophia's small apartment, she unlocked the door and let Amir in. He looked around. The place was simple but full of warmth. Books lined the shelves, photographs filled the walls. He noticed a small table with candles and a single old photo frame. It was a picture of a young Sophia holding a tiny baby in a hospital blanket. He walked toward it slowly. "Is that me?" he asked. Sophia nodded. "It's the only photo I had of you. The hospital let me hold you once before they took you away." Amir stared at it for a long time. "You kept it all these years." She smiled softly. "Some things never leave your heart, no matter how short they stay." Amir sat down on the couch. He looked like he wanted to say something but wasn't sure how. Sophia sat beside him, waiting. After a long pause, he spoke. "There's something else I didn't put in the letter." She turned to him, gently curious. "When I was 10, I used to dream about someone. A woman's voice reading to me. I thought it was just a dream. But the first time you read aloud in class, I froze. It was the same voice." Sophia's eyes filled. She reached for his hand. "That's how deep bonds work, Amir. They don't need time to grow. They just exist." He held her hand tightly. "I was so angry for so many years. I thought I was unwanted. But I always felt this pull towards something I couldn't explain. And when I joined your class, everything made sense." Sophia nodded. "The world took you away, but it couldn't take what we had. I'm sorry I couldn't fight harder to keep you. You did more than anyone else ever did." Amir said, "You gave me a name, a story, a beginning." She wiped a tear from her cheek. "Why did you wait until today to tell me?" He looked down. "I was scared. Scared you'd forgotten, or moved on, or maybe didn't want to remember." "I never forgot," she whispered. "I looked for you. But the adoption records were sealed. I had no way of finding out where you were." He pulled something from his backpack. It was a small black book. This belonged to my grandmother. She wrote everything in here. She kept it hidden, but last year she got sick. Before she passed away, she gave it to me. Sophia opened the book slowly. Inside were names, dates, notes, and one page with her name, Miss Sophia, on the words. She wanted to keep him. She named him Amir. Find her one day. Sophia closed the book and held it close to her heart. Your grandmother. She knew. She always knew, Amir said, but she was afraid. She thought it would confuse me, hurt me. Maybe she wanted to protect you, Sophia said kindly. She did raise you, after all. Amir nodded. She wasn't perfect, but she cared, and she knew you were important. Sophia stood up and walked to her old bookshelf. She pulled out a thin, worn journal. This was mine, she said, from the year I found you. She handed it to Amir. He opened it and saw pages of writing, drawings of a baby, small notes. One page had the words, I held him, I named him, and then I lost him. Another page read, I hope he knows he is loved, wherever he is. Amir stared at the page, his eyes stinging. I didn't know anyone ever wrote about me like this. I never stopped, Sophia whispered. I wrote to you every year on your birthday. I never mailed them. I just kept them. She opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of envelopes. Each one had the date of Amir's birthday. They're all for you. Amir took the stack, holding it like something sacred. Can I read them? Of course, she said. They're yours. He opened the first one and began to read. As he read, Sophia sat quietly beside him, letting him take in the years of love and words he had never received. The room was filled with quiet sniffles and the sound of paper turning. After a while, Amir looked up. Can I call you something? Else now she looked into his eyes, her heart full. Anything you want. He hesitated, then said softly, Can I call you Mama? Her lips trembled. She nodded, tears falling freely now. Yes, Amir. Yes, you can. He stood up and hugged her tightly, wrapping his arms around her like he had waited his whole life for this one moment. And maybe he had. In that small apartment, under the soft light of old memories and new hope, a student and a teacher became something more. They became the ending of a lost story, and the beginning of a new one. Together the next morning felt different. For the first time in a long while, Miss Sophia woke up with a light heart. The letter, the photo, Amir's voice calling her Mama, all of it still echoed in her mind like a sweet dream. But it wasn't a dream, it was real. She walked to the kitchen and made 2 cups of tea. Amir was already awake, sitting at the table, reading one of the birthday letters she had written to him years ago. He looked up and smiled, a small, peaceful smile that she had never seen on his face before. Good morning, he said. She smiled back. Good morning, my son. He looked down, shy but happy. They drank tea in silence for a while, both of them just soaking in the comfort of being together. After breakfast, Amir stood up and said, I want to show you something. He pulled out a small cloth pouch from his bag and handed it to her. Inside was a folded newspaper clipping. She opened it gently. It was old, yellowed, and soft at the edges. The headline read, Local teacher finds abandoned baby at school gate. The photo showed a young Sophia holding a blanket in her arms. Her eyes in the photo looked shocked but full of care. She stared at the article in silence. You kept this? She asked. Amir nodded. My grandmother saved it. I found it last year. That's when I knew for sure. Sophia held the clipping to her chest. That day changed my life. I thought I lost you forever, but you didn't, Amir said. I found my way back. She looked at him, her eyes soft. I still remember how you cried when they took you from me. You were so small. I promised I would never forget you. Amir sat back down. There's one more thing I want to do. She tilted her head. What is it? I want to go back to the school. One more time. With you. Her face changed. You know I retired. Yesterday was my final class. I know, he said. But we never said goodbye properly. Not like this. She thought for a moment, then smiled. All right, let's go. They walked together to the school, side by side, like old friends. The sky was clear, the sun soft and warm. It felt like a new beginning. When they arrived, the school gate was still open. The staff was cleaning the classrooms. One teacher saw them and waved. Miss Sophia, you're back already. Sophia smiled kindly. Just for a short visit. She and Amir walked through the hallway. The walls still had drawings from the students. The air still smelled like old books and chalk. Amir stopped outside their old classroom. This is where I sat, he said, pointing to the last row, and I always watched you from here. She stepped into the room, slowly touching the teacher's desk. This room has seen everything. Laughter, tears, dreams. Amir walked to his seat and sat down. Do you remember the first time I raised my hand? She nodded. You asked me what the word hope meant. He smiled. And you said, hope means believing something good is coming, even when you don't see it yet. And I meant it, she replied. Even when I didn't see you, I believed you were out there somewhere. He stood and walked toward her, holding something in his hand. It was a small, wrapped box. This is for you, he said. I was saving it for the last day, but I was too afraid to give it then. She took the box and opened it carefully. Inside was a delicate bracelet. A silver charm hung from it, shaped like the letter A for Amir. She whispered, Turn it over, he said. On the back, in tiny letters, it said, "You gave me my name. Now I give you my heart." Her eyes filled instantly. "This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received. You gave me everything," he said softly. "A name, a voice, a chance." She hugged him tightly, tears falling silently. They stayed that way for a moment, frozen in time. Then they turned and looked around the classroom one last time. The chairs, the windows, the memories. Amir walked to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. He wrote slowly in big letters, "Thank you, Miss Sophia Love." "Amir," she walked over and added underneath, "you were always my son, even before I knew your name." They both stood back and looked at the message. Then they smiled. As they left the room, one of the cleaning staff walked in behind them. She noticed the message on the board and paused. Her eyes softened. "You know," she said, "this room always felt special. Now I know why." Sophia smiled kindly. "Some stories don't end with goodbyes, they begin with them." Outside, the sky had turned golden with the setting sun. Amir and Sophia walked down the street, the school behind them, and a new future ahead. They didn't need many words anymore. The silence was enough. The love they had found in the middle of so much loss was more powerful than anything they had ever known. And as they reached the same school gate where it all began years ago, they paused. Amir looked at her and said, "This was the place you found me." She nodded. "And this is the place I found you again." They walked on, side by side, a teacher, a student, a mother, a son, not by blood, but by something deeper, by love, by destiny. Amir and Miss Sophia walked slowly back toward her apartment, the quiet of the evening wrapping around them like a soft blanket. The air felt different now, not heavy like the day before. It felt calm, peaceful, and full of meaning. Each step they took was a step away from the past they had both carried alone for too long. When they reached the apartment, Sophia unlocked the door, and they stepped inside. Everything was still, the way they had left it. Amir placed the small bracelet box on the table, then looked around the room. He noticed the small bookshelf in the corner, filled with journals and old letters. "You really did write me every year," he said, his voice soft. Sophia nodded. "It was the only way I could talk to you. I never knew if you'd read them, but I had to believe one day you would." Amir sat down on the couch and held one of the letters in his hand. "You know, I always thought I was just a mistake, a child no one wanted, but your words, they changed that." Sophia sat beside him. "You were never a mistake, Amir. You were a miracle that the world just didn't understand at the time." He looked at her, eyes filled with something deeper than gratitude. "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" She smiled sadly. "Every day, I used to dream about raising you, watching you grow, hearing you call me mama. I thought I'd never get that. But here you are. Somehow, we still found each other." He leaned his head on her shoulder. "Maybe it was meant to happen this way. Maybe if we hadn't been separated, we wouldn't understand the value of what we have now." She gently stroked his hair, her heart full. "Maybe you're right. Life has strange ways of bringing people back together." A soft knock at the door broke the moment. Sophia stood and opened it. To her surprise, it was Mr. Freed, the school principal. He smiled politely, holding a small package in his hand. "Sorry to disturb you, Miss Sophia. I found this on your desk after you left. Thought it might be important." He handed her the package. She thanked him, and he gave Amir a warm glance before leaving. She closed the door and brought the package to the table. "I don't remember leaving anything behind," she said, carefully unwrapping it. Inside was a faded blue box. When she opened it, her breath caught. It was a small toy airplane, old but well kept. Taped to it was a note in a child's handwriting. "You once said I could fly if I believed. I never stopped believing. Thank you for making me feel seen. Rami, class of 2012. Amir leaned forward, amazed. "That's beautiful." Sophia smiled, holding the plane in her hand. He was a shy boy, always drawing airplanes in his notebook. He didn't talk much, but he listened. "I didn't know he remembered." Amir looked around the room, noticing the many small gifts from former students' cards, handmade drawings, tiny crafts. "You've changed so many lives," he said. "You didn't just teach, you healed people." She placed the toy plane on the shelf beside the letters. "I tried. Sometimes all a child needs is to feel understood." Amir nodded slowly. "There was one time you caught me crying in the hallway. You didn't say anything. You just sat beside me until I stopped. I never forgot that." "I remember," she said softly. "You didn't need words that day. You just needed someone to stay." He smiled. "You always stayed. Even when you didn't know who I was." Sophia reached for his hand. "Some people are written into our hearts before we even meet them." Later that night, they sat on the balcony, watching the stars. The sky was clear, a rare moment of peace after days of heavy rain. Amir pointed to a bright star above. "When I was little, I used to look at that one and wish for someone to come find me." "I think I wished on the same star," she replied. "I used to ask it to bring you back to me." "Maybe it was listening," he said. She smiled. "Maybe it always was." They sat there for a long time, lost in the quiet beauty of the moment. Neither of them wanted to speak too much. Words were no longer needed. The silence between them said everything. When it got late, Amir stood up and stretched. "Tomorrow, I want to go somewhere." He said. "Where?" Sophia asked. To the orphanage. I want to see where I came from. Maybe talk to someone who remembers me as a baby. She hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, he said firmly. I think it's time. And I want you with me. She nodded. Then we'll go together. He gave her a hug before heading to the guest room. Good night, Mama. She smiled, a soft tear rolling down her cheek. Good night, my son. After he left, she sat on the balcony a little longer, looking at the sky. Her heart felt full of years of pain, hope, loss, and now healing. The letter, the photo, the name, all of it had brought her back to the boy she once lost. And the boy who never stopped waiting. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this story was far from over. There were still pages to be written, but for now, this chapter was enough. She closed her eyes, whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, and let the night hold her gently, like a mother cradling her child for the first time. The next morning, the sun peeked gently through the curtains, casting a golden glow across the living room. Miss Sophia was already awake, sitting on the edge of her couch with a photo album open in her lap. The pages were filled with pictures of her past students, their smiles frozen in time. She smiled softly as she touched each face, remembering their laughter, their questions, and even their tears. Then she turned the page and paused. There, tucked between two pages, was a small drawing of a baby wrapped in a blue blanket. It was one she had made years ago, her only way of remembering the little boy she had once held and lost. Now, that boy was sleeping in the next room. Amir stepped out quietly, rubbing his eyes. You're up early, he said. Sophia looked up and smiled. I couldn't sleep. Too many memories came back. He walked over and sat beside her. Are you still okay to come with me? She nodded without hesitation. Yes, I need to go to. Maybe I'll find answers I never got. Back then, after breakfast they left the house and took a taxi to the old neighborhood where the orphanage stood. The building was still there, though older and a little worn down. The same iron gate, the same cracked sidewalk, the same faded sign above the door. St. Mary's Home for Children. Amir hesitated at the gate. I don't remember anything about this place. You were too young, Sophia said gently. But some memories live in your heart, even if your mind forgets. They walked in together. Inside, the walls were freshly painted, and children's laughter echoed through the halls. A woman with kind eyes greeted them at the desk. Welcome. How can I help you? Amir spoke slowly. I used to live here. I was left at a school gate as a baby. This is where they brought me. The woman looked surprised. Do you know your birth name? I was given the name Amir, he replied, by a teacher. She's with me. Sophia stepped forward. I was the one who found him, 18 years ago. I named him Amir. I never forgot. The woman smiled warmly. Wait here. Let me check the old records. They waited in the small visitor room, the air filled with distant sounds of children playing. Amir looked around, trying to see if anything felt familiar, but nothing came. It was like looking at a stranger's memories. The woman returned with a small file. We still have some paperwork from that year. Not much. But she handed it to Amir. This is you. Amir opened the file slowly. Inside was a short report. Infant boy found at school gate. Estimated age 3 weeks. No identification. Temporary name. Baby A. Below that, a handwritten note named Amir, by Miss Sophia Malik, schoolteacher. Transferred to St. Mary's. Breath caught in her throat. That's my handwriting. Amir flipped to the last page. There was one more note written in pencil. Faded but still readable. Refused adoption request from Miss Sophia Malik due to legal restrictions. Child placed in state care. She closed her eyes for a moment, holding back tears. I tried so hard. Amir put a hand on hers. I know. You did more than anyone. The woman stood quietly, watching them with a soft expression. You're welcome to visit the nursery. It hasn't changed much over the years. Followed her down the hallway into a small room filled with cribs and toys. The walls were painted with soft clouds and stars. A mobile hung from the ceiling, gently spinning. This was your first bed, the woman said, pointing to one of the cribs near the window. Amir walked over and touched the railing. It's strange. I don't remember it, but I feel something. Sophia stood beside him, her voice gentle. This was where your journey began, and now it's come full circle. He turned to her. I'm glad I came. I needed to see this. They thanked the woman and left the building slowly, both of them quiet as they walked through the gate. Outside, the sun was brighter, the air warmer. As they got into the taxi, Amir turned to Sophia. There's one more place I want to go. We're the school, but not the classroom. The front gate, the exact spot where you found me. Her eyes softened. Let's go. The taxi stopped outside the school. The yard was empty, quiet. Amir stepped out first and walked toward the gate. He stood there silently for a long time, looking down at the ground as if searching for a footprint left behind all those years. This is where it happened, he said. Someone left me here. Alone. Sophia walked beside him. But this is also where someone found you. With love. He nodded slowly. It's strange. For years, I thought being left here meant I wasn't wanted. But now it feels different. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You weren't abandoned, Amir. You were placed into a story that brought us back to each other. The sun was beginning to set when Amir and Miss Sophia returned home. The light spilled through the windows like soft gold, wrapping everything in calm. They didn't speak much on the way back. The day had been long, full of memories, emotions, and answers they hadn't expected to find. But there was peace in the silence between them now. Amir sat on the couch, holding a cup of tea Sophia had made. He stared out the window, his mind still in the orphanage nursery, still at the school gate where his life had started in the most uncertain way. "Do you feel different now?" Sophia asked gently, sitting across from him. He nodded slowly. "I do. I used to feel like I came from nothing, like I was a mistake. But today I realized that I came from love. Maybe not in the usual way, but love found me anyway." Sophia smiled. "Sometimes love has to take the long road, but it always arrives." He looked at her. "I'm glad it led me to you." She reached across the table and held his hand. It was always going to own. That night, Amir sat in the guest room with the stack of birthday letters Sophia had written him over the years. He opened each one slowly, reading the words with a quiet heart. In one letter, she wrote about his first word, even though she never heard it. In another, she imagined him learning to ride a bike. She wrote about the books she hoped he would read, the places he might visit, the kind of man he might become. "I hope you're kind," one letter said. "I hope you forgive quickly, and I hope you always remember that you were loved from the start." Amir wiped his eyes as he read. No one had ever written to him like that. No one had loved him from afar for so long. The next morning, they woke early. It was the day of Miss Sophia's retirement ceremony. The school had planned something special, though she had kept it quiet. She hadn't invited many people, only a few old colleagues and students, but Amir insisted on coming. "I want to be there," he said, "not as your student, as your son." Sophia smiled and nodded. "Then let's go." At the school, the auditorium was decorated with flowers and banners. A sign near the stage read, "Thank you, Miss Sophia, for teaching with heart." The room filled slowly. Some of her old students came with their children, now grown up. They hugged her, gave her flowers, and shared stories of how she changed their lives. One girl said, "You were the first adult who listened to me." Another boy said, "You taught me more than English. You taught me to believe in myself." Sophia was overwhelmed, her heart full. Then the principal called her to the stage. She walked slowly, every step heavy with emotion. She looked out at the crowd, then down at Amir, who sat in the front row, smiling proudly. She took a deep breath and began. "I was never just a teacher," she said. "I was a student too. I learned from every child who sat in my classroom. I learned about pain, joy, courage, and hope. I gave lessons, yes, but I received many more in return." She paused, her voice shaking. "There was one student who changed everything for me. He didn't know it at the time, and neither did I, but life brought us back together. And in him, I found something I thought I'd lost forever." People in the room grew quiet, sensing something deep. She looked at Amir. "He's sitting here today, and I want everyone to know that he's not just my student, he's my son." A soft gasp moved through the crowd. Amir stood up slowly, his eyes bright. He walked to the stage with something in his hand, a framed piece of paper, and a small box. Sophia took the frame. Inside was the letter she had written when she found him, the same one Amir had returned to her. The box held the bracelet with the silver charm. "This is from me," Amir said into the microphone. "For the teacher who gave me my name, for the woman who waited, for the mother who never stopped loving me." The room was silent. A few people wiped their eyes. Some smiled through tears. Sophia held the frame close to her heart. "Thank you," she whispered, "for coming back to me." They hugged there on the stage, and the crowd stood, clapping. Some took photos, others just stood in quiet respect for the moment unfolding before them. After the ceremony, people came forward to speak to Amir. Some said they remembered him from class, though he had always kept to himself. Others said they were amazed by the story. But Amir didn't feel like the shy boy anymore. He stood beside Sophia with confidence, knowing who he was, and knowing he was loved. That evening, back at home, they sat together in the living room once more. The framed letter stood on the shelf beside the photo of young Sophia and baby Amir. Amir looked at her and said, "Do you think the person who left me ever thought this would happen?" She thought for a moment. "Maybe not, but maybe they hoped someone would take care of you, someone who would love you like their own. And you did," he said, "even when you didn't have to." She smiled and held his hand. "No, I had to. My heart chose you the moment I saw you." Outside, the stars began to appear again. They didn't say anything for a while. They just sat together, side by side. A teacher who had given her heart to her students, a boy who had once been lost but found his way back to the one who had never truly let him go. And though the classroom was now empty, the lessons still lived on, in kindness, in hope, in love. A few weeks had passed since the retirement ceremony, but the warmth of that day still lived inside Miss Sophia's small home. The framed letter remained on the shelf. The bracelet lay carefully in its box, and the memories floated gently in the air like old songs playing softly in the background. Life had found a quiet rhythm again. Sophia spent her mornings reading, watering her plants, and enjoying the silence that no longer felt lonely. Amir had started helping at a local community center, working with children who reminded him of the boy he used to be, quiet, uncertain, searching for something they couldn't explain. Every evening, he returned to Sophia's home. They cooked together, shared stories, and built a bond that felt more natural with each passing day. One night, after dinner, Amir brought out a small box from his backpack and placed it on the table. "What's this?" Sophia asked, looking curious. "Something I've been working on," he said. "It's for you." She opened the box slowly. Inside was a handmade book. The cover read, "A Boy Named Amir, A Story of Being Found." She looked at him, eyes wide. "You wrote a book?" "A small one," he said with a shy smile. "It's our story. I wanted to tell it from my heart. I thought maybe it could help someone else out there who feels lost." She opened the first page, a drawing of a school gate, a baby wrapped in a blanket, a line written in soft pencil. "Some stories begin with silence, but they end with love." Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages. Each one held part of their journey. The letters, the classroom, the photograph, the school ceremony. It was all there, written in simple words, drawn with care. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "You've turned our pain into something powerful. I thought maybe we could print a few copies," he said. "Give them to libraries, maybe even schools." She nodded. "Let's do it." A few days later, they visited a small local press. The owner, an older man with a warm smile, agreed to help them print 10 copies to start. When the books were ready, Amir and Sophia went to the local library. The librarian read the first few pages and immediately offered to place it in the reading corner for children and teens. "This could really help someone," she said. "It's honest and full of heart." As they walked home, Amir looked up at the sky. "I never thought I'd feel like I belonged anywhere." "And now?" Sophia asked. "Now I know I belong right here," he said. "With you." She placed her arm around his shoulder. "And I belong with you." A week later, a letter arrived at their door. It was from one of Sophia's former students, a girl named Layla, who had seen the ceremony online. She wrote, "Miss Sophia, I used to sit in the front row and cry after school when no one saw me. But you saw me. You always asked if I was okay, even when I lied and said I was fine. I just wanted you to know that I've become a teacher now because of you. And I tell my students what you once told me, your voice matters. Thank you for never giving up on quiet kids." Sophia read the letter aloud to Amir when she finished. Neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't sad. It was full of meaning. Amir looked at her. "You changed more lives than you'll ever know." She smiled through tears. "And so will you." That weekend, they visited a nearby children's shelter. Amir read his story aloud to a small group of kids. Some listened with quiet eyes. Others sat with their heads down, like they weren't ready to hear it yet. But one little boy, maybe 6 or 7, walked up after the reading and said, "Was that real?" Amir smiled gently. "Every word." The boy nodded slowly. "I don't know where my mama is. But maybe one day I'll find someone like you." Amir knelt down. "Maybe someone's already looking for you. And until then, you've got people here who care." The boy smiled shyly and hugged him. Sophia stood nearby, watching with proud eyes. On the walk home, Amir was quiet. She asked, "Are you okay?" "Yeah," he said. I saw myself in him." "I saw you too," she whispered. Months passed. Seasons changed. Their bond only grew stronger. Some nights they still sat with the old letters, reading them together. Other nights, they wrote new ones, this time to each other, to themselves, to the future. On the anniversary of the day she found him, they returned to the school gate. Amir placed a fresh letter there, under the same small stone.